Kim Iverson's one of my favorite American broadcasters. I'm so glad that she's joining us again this evening. Kim, welcome back on the mother of all talk shows. Can I trouble you to comment on the British royal family? I do for this reason only, because I'm sure it's not top of your agenda, but you actually are quite likely to know more about what's going on than we can, because we have basically a blanket covering the truth, a blanket covering accurate information or any information at all. What are you hearing, reading, seeing about this subject in the US media?
Of Kate Middleton, that she's just disappeared, that nobody knows where she is, of the latest
Yes.
photoshopped photograph. I mean, that's what we're getting. We're getting is that there was a photograph, a photoshopped photograph. She had surgery, right? And then she hadn't been seen from. And then there was this photoshopped thing, the photoshopped picture. I don't know. I have to admit that I love following the royal family. It's like my guilty pleasure. But who knows I mean, there's no. Some people have said, "Oh, she's run off. She's like defected to Russia or something." So stupid theories. But otherwise, I have no idea what is going on with that whole thing. Except we saw her riding with her mom.
I wondered when. Yeah, well, except it may not have been her in that picture. It certainly didn't look like her. Now, of course, we don't know what the impact of surgery has on someone's physiognomy, but it's quite odd that no verifiable picture has been produced in 79 days since we
right.
last
That's not the picture, by the way, that they're showing. I don't think that's the photograph. There's a picture of her with her mom.
No.
And I think she's in the front seat. Isn't that the one that they said, oh, she's been spotted?
Except it's widely believed that that isn't her either. But let's not get bogged down on Picturegate. I'm just, I was wondering when Russia would finally get mentioned in the context of this disappearing Princess Kate, and Putin would get the blame. I didn't expect it to be on my own show, but yeah, if she's run away anywhere, I must hope. Yeah, or from you. I must hope if she has run away, that she's run away to a family values type place like Russia. Kim, you've got your own royal family, the Biden crime family. How are they faring these days? Whatever happened to Hunter Biden? And how is Joe doing?
Well, Joe is to be expected for somebody who is suffering from some mental, loss and mental decline. Although interestingly, during the State of the Union address, he seemed really spunky, like maybe Hunter is around and Hunter maybe spiked his coffee with something, because Joe was very animated. I was very surprised by the State of the Union address and how animated Joe Biden was. Look, it's just right now it's the same as it's always been, which is that there is a group of people who, and rightfully, I think, are trying to get to the bottom of whether or not there's some corruption with Joe Biden and Ukraine and, his foreign entanglements. How did somebody who has served in the public, and as somebody who's been serving in government for a long time, there shouldn't be a lot of money in it. And yet Joe Biden is very wealthy.
No,
his family is very wealthy. You don't get rich. Well, he certainly has.
Yeah, you don't get rich
and so is his family.
From being an elected politician, I can assure you of that. But the Bidens have got very rich indeed.
Yeah, very rich, very rich. So there's still a lot of questions around that. I'm not sure how deep anyone in our politics really want to go. I think they want to go far enough to just ensure that Biden doesn't win another election. But I don't believe that our political leaders are actually going to go after him and actually dig up real crime, because then the finger eventually goes back on them as well. There's so many that are corrupt in our political system on both sides of the aisle. They don't want us to really snuff it out. They just want enough to ensure that Joe Biden is looked at in a negative light by the population, so that they would, just kind of to edge him out in the upcoming election that's happening this November.
I did an interview earlier this evening with my old friend Rick Sanchez, about, and I heard him say, he was talking before he came to me about Biden's poll numbers. They have plummeted again. It's inconceivable that this mentally challenged old man could win another 4-year term, is it?
Well, I think it is inconceivable if the voters actually have a say, but anything's possible if you're going to work around the voters in some crafty, clever, creative ways, then anything's possible. But yeah, he's extremely, extremely unpopular. And I think what voters are starting to realize now is that he's not worse than Donald Trump. People were, when they voted for him the first time to try to defeat Donald Trump, I think a lot of those people feel like, what was the point of that? We're in a worse spot now than we were with Donald Trump. So just go back to the guy that maybe he's, on Twitter, he's says a lot of stuff. Maybe he's crass in the things that he says, and he's definitely not politically correct, but we were in a much better position with Donald Trump as president. And I think they're also seeing the very things that they really went after Donald Trump for, the border and racism and war. They're seeing that Joe Biden is worse on all of those points. So, I think a lot of people who were independent who voted for Donald Trump, who voted for Biden, they're not buying that this time around. So yeah, his poll numbers are terrible. There is no there's no conceivable way he can win unless they rig it, which they might.
Yeah, imagine that it's come to this, that we can, with equanimity, exchange the possibilities that he might win it if they rig it. They might win it if they knock the Republican Party's candidate off the ballot. Imagine,
right,
like a banana republic, the banning of the major rival candidate, the kind of thing that would get you invaded by the United States in Latin America. It's come to something that we have to worry whether Donald Trump will be terminated with extreme prejudice. What kind of democracy is this?
Well, maybe it's not one. Maybe it's not one. Maybe we've just been told that it is one. Certainly, a lot of the things that we've been told by our political class, by our media, by the gaslighting, have panned out to not be true. I mean, when we look at all of our foreign policy decisions, all of this supposedly to free people, save lives. Could you imagine the saying that with a straight face? And spreading, we're doing all of these things to save the world, to spread democracy, to save lives. And yet all of that is panning out to be untrue. There's just more truths coming out about our political leaders, about our elites, about our government, that a lot of Americans who really believed that we lived in the best country in the world, because we've been taught that since we were born, that we were lucky to be born in the United States of America. Many, I think, are now starting to say, my government has lied to me my entire life. What other lies have they told us? And I think a lot of people are starting to feel like the facade of democracy is one of those things, that they really ultimately just put into power who they want in power, and they'll do anything to ensure that the people who they don't want in power don't get into power. Donald Trump, I think, is the closest to, he's a person that's been able to buck all of that and defy them no matter what. And I think that obviously is very aggravating to them, because they're doing everything they possibly can to ensure that he doesn't end up in the White House. And there's just one more move for them to make, and I'm afraid they'll make it, where they just make it to where he really cannot, because he's not around.
Yeah, if I were him, I'd hire a group of retired Russian Spetsnaz security, probably the best available. I'm thinking of doing it myself, because the British are not going to protect me. But one thing that is new this week, Kim, is that Joe Biden has begun to turn on, or at least wants us to believe he's turned on, his former BFF, Benjamin Netanyahu. We're asked to believe that he was secretly overheard telling a group of people at the end of the State of the Union that he's going to have a come to Jesus moment with Netanyahu. A very odd choice of words indeed. But is it true? Is he turning against Netanyahu? Or does he realize that he's lost so much ground as a result of having supported Netanyahu to the extent that he has? Which is it?
He's certainly not turning on Netanyahu. It is just rhetoric. He realizes that his numbers are down. He realizes that the voting base is not in support of what the political class wants, which is supporting Israel endlessly without any any restraints on them whatsoever. And so he's just saying things in order to try to please the voting base, but nothing. And if you listen to what even Netanyahu said on Monday, so you have Joe Biden on the State of the Union having this hot mic saying, "Come to Jesus moment" with Netanyahu. And then Netanyahu comes out Monday going around in various different interviews and making it very clear that Joe Biden is a friend and that of his and that he's happy with the support that the Biden administration has given him. So Netanyahu's not upset. He's not thinking that the U.S. When has Netanyahu ever said, do more for us? He's never needed to say that because we're doing everything they ask. So as long, he doesn't care. What does Netanyahu care if Joe Biden makes a comment in the press or says something here and there just for show? He ultimately gets what he wants. And behind closed doors, that's probably the conversation he has really, truly with people in the administration, which is, well, you're getting what you want, so it doesn't matter what the politicians say for political reasons.
Yeah, quite extraordinary. And there's no sign of him coming to Jesus yet. The outcome of the November election, of course, remains to be seen. But the one thing you can be sure of is that the losers of the American election will be the ordinary Joe and Joanne in the United States. We keep hearing that we keep hearing from Biden that the American economy is doing well, but it doesn't look like that to me. How does it feel to you, Kim?
Well, certainly it doesn't. The grocery prices, the gas price, everything's very high here right now. So it doesn't feel like the economy is booming. People are, there's just a lot of struggling going on. We see endless homelessness in this country, yet we're signing checks away to all these other foreign countries. So, there's this idea that the economy is booming, but people are working many jobs to make ends meet. The gig economy is strong with that. So that makes people work 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. People are not able to afford, with having good jobs and really great salaries, they're not able to afford even just 1-bedroom apartments in many of the major cities in America. So they have to get roommates and they're making $100,000 a year. I mean, so the economy is not great. We're not.
Now, finally, I was talking again with Rick Sanchez about this last night. Shows like yours and others like you are doing so fantastically well that let's call them the legacy media, the so-called mainstream media, are being left trailing. I mean, at the top of our tree, yours and mine, the top of our tree, Tucker Carlson is turning in viewer figures that, would be the viewer figures for a year for most mainstream television hosts. Your numbers, my numbers, they're all up and up and up and up. What does that tell us about the future of so-called mainstream media?
Well, it tells us that people are no longer buying the propaganda and that they realize, more importantly, they realize they're being propagandized. They realize that the news organizations are not actually reporting on news. They're reporting on what the powers that be want to have reported. And that has become, especially in this country right now, I'm not sure what's going on in your country, but here it's becoming more blatantly obvious. When you've got organizations like the New York Times, for example, doing an investigation to find out who leaked the latest batch of Pentagon documents, and then finding out who that is and turning that person's name into the authorities. The journalists were doing that.
Wow.
That is just going to show that the mainstream media has turned into the henchmen of the elites. When you've got CNN and Fox News saying the same exact things about the pandemic, fear-mongering everybody, even when it was completely against the science that we were seeing coming out, people are waking up to this. People are waking up to all of the talking points, the endless support for Ukraine, when the people were not supporting it. People are starting to wake up to this. These people in the media are not representing, and they're not fairly, and it really, even if they don't represent, that's okay. They don't have to represent anybody, but they should just report facts. They should report the news, and they don't. And so people are flocking to places where they're actually getting a person, they can listen to that person and know that person is telling them the truth, the straight up truth, not sugar-coated. You certainly don't sugarcoat anything. And that's what people are wanting. They're wanting the straight up truth. And they're getting that in independent sources.
The mainstream media have become the henchmen of the elite. That's a zinger that will live, Kim. And believe me, I know a zinger when I hear one. How do people follow the Kim Iverson show?
You could watch the Kim Iverson show Monday through Friday at, what time is it? It's 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure what time that is for you guys over there, but it's on Rumble, exclusively on Rumble.
Fantastic. Kim Iverson, it's a pleasure, as always, to interview you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows.